Welcome, hero of light, to Indie Spotlight. Come join us on a fun-filled adventure full of drama, crystals, and turn-based combat. I will be your GM, Sizer. It's been a hard battle, but your party has finally claimed victory. Da 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 da. But what's this? The foe has a third form? You ready your stalwart souls for what's sure to be the hardest fight yet. You raise your staff and prepare to summon Ramu. But now what? Instead of a wizened Eidolon, you've called the Indie Spotlight Lightning Round. Guest, what is your name, please?
My name is Mildra the Monk.
Oh, right. What are your pronouns, Mildra?
Just him, because I am him.
You are him. You are him. You are Mildra the Winter Monk.
Mhm.
And where do you live, if you don't mind saying?
I am. Well, with all the memes that I make about it, I'm perfectly fine with sharing it. I'm in Minnesota.
Gotcha. And I'm just a few south of you, in Iowa. So we're neighbors.
Mhm.
So, we're not good neighbors, but we are neighbors.
Yeah.
So what kind of creative are you, Mildra?
Obviously, I'm a VTuber. I'm a podcaster. I do a lot of highlighting of a lot of different games from all over the place.
Cool. And for this project, what was your role?
I am the lead writer and developer, and basically the guy where the buck stops.
Right. The EP, so to speak, the executive producer. So what is the project that we're talking about this evening?
The project is the Final Fantasy TTRPG Legend Edition.
And in no particular order, what are your 3 favorite main series Final Fantasy games?
Ooh, that's gonna be a tricky one. I'm gonna go with the ones that are less obvious for this.
Okay.
So I'm going to bring up 8. I'm going to bring up 10.
Okay.
And I'm going to bring up 16.
Okay. We overlapped with 1. We both agree on 10. My other 2 are 9 and 6. 6 was the first one I played way back in the 90s, and I never really gotten over it. So
yeah.
Anyway, welcome to Indie Spotlight, Mildra. We're very happy to have you here tonight. First time we're ever doing a live show. So, thank you for everyone who's popping into the chat here. And let's just get into it. So, I looked at, there seems to be a bit of a history behind Final Fantasy fan games and so forth. Can you tell us briefly about the inspirations for Final Fantasy TTRPG Legend Edition?
Which, for the sake of brevity, I mainly refer to as Legend Edition.
Yep.
The approach that I've taken is that this is building upon a long history of fan RPGs, starting all the way back from the Returners project in the mid-90s, which was heavily inspired by RuneQuest. After that, the Returners project went through 3 editions over the course of more than 10 years. Then a split happened, and a lot of the people involved with it went off to other projects. Some people went off to do Zodiac. Some people went off to do D20. Some people went off to do D6. And eventually, you end up with those, as well as some people went off to do Seed. Those projects served as the impetus for what I call the second generation. And these were people who were making their own games that were inspired by the Returners project, but they weren't part of the original teams. This is where you get things like Omega Fantasy by Omega, as well as 4th edition by Bruno, and Bahamut Academy, which is supposed to be this mix of Zodiac and 3rd edition, but I can't say too much detail on it because it was never in English. It was a Portuguese only game.
Okay.
And then after all of that, originally the idea that I had was just taking the track design that's in Legend System by Rule of Cool and putting a Final Fantasy spin on it. Then the idea got stuck in my head and wouldn't leave. One thing led to another, and here we are.
Okay, well, yeah, that sounds like there's a lot of there's like an entire saga to be told about this history, which is why which is why I said please be brief. But that's kind of amazing. Well, I guess not that amazing when you think about it, because so many people are fans of this franchise. You know, you and I both are, obviously. It's the as I was telling you before we got on the air, it's my favorite JRPG franchise, probably favorite RPG franchise of all time. And so it was a real pleasure to get to see what you've done with Legend Edition, and to immerse myself in all the familiar tropes and monsters and magic and everything that makes Final Fantasy what it is. Yeah. So aside from you, we had a lot of people involved in this project, I'm sure. How many people did you have altogether on your staff?
Counting myself, 4 people. There's, of course, me as the guy where the buck stops. The HIIC, as my father would say, or head idiot in charge. There is Xanatrix Zadare, who is my co-writer and editor-in-chief, and he will insist on being referred to as editor-in-chief at every opportunity.
Of course.
It's like a Tribe Called Quest. You got to say the whole thing. And in addition to that, there is Matt, a.k.a. the Memory Slot, who originally was helping me with the character sheet, and then that graduated to helping me with the overall book design after the FF project that he was working on kind of fizzled out. And by that point, what I was doing was far more developed. So he had a bunch of assets for that project. So he decided to pitch bringing it over to me. And Nami Nomi, who's also helping with the graphic design. A lot of the design of the PDF was on her.
It's good to have somebody who knows that aspect of it, right? I'm going to tell you right now that with working on Skies of Fortune, I'm not sure what we're going to do for layout. We haven't crossed that bridge. We have a lot of development ahead of us still, but I'm probably going to have to shell out for that. Because it's so important in a TTRPG to have a good layout, to have something that's accessible and looks good. So I'm glad that you had that. You clearly had that going on with this, because all the pages look great.
I gave Nami and Matt a lot of latitude in terms of how they were going to visually set up the book. I did commission a handful of art, basically all of the art that you see for classes and jobs, aside from ones that are just taken from the games, was art that I commissioned personally. And I had worked with an artist of mine named June Chris, who I had worked with plenty of times. They were instrumental in the VTuber design that you see in front of you. And I had a particular vision and a few things that I knew I wanted there. I wanted an index, I wanted properly organized bookmarks, and I wanted hyperlinks where possible.
Okay.
Navigation is a big deal for me. And having proper navigation is paramount, especially when you're dealing with a book of this size. And I've had my PTSD moments when dealing with games like Rifts that have these massive books with no index and a table of contents that's not accurate, which is part of the reason Rifts has been my whipping boy for most of my life.
Well, I didn't play with the links very much, but I am glad that it's been working out. I didn't have much trouble finding anything in the book. Was able to get right to where I needed to be with everything. So, folks, if you like Mildra, have some trauma regarding getting around in your TTRPG books, this you've got a kindred spirit here, and someone who is knows your pain and wants to sort of alleviate it, even with a book that's how many pages long? The main book is how many pages?
Let me open that up.
It's like 400 plus, I want to say.
It is around 500 pages.
It's around 500 pages, yeah. And we'll get into the reasons why it's so long as we get through these questions.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, there's a lot in there. Anything that just about anything that you can think of in Final Fantasy that a player character has been, or a player, one of the main characters, one of the main playable characters has been in the past, you can probably be that. So with that in mind, would you like to tell us how the classes and jobs work, and maybe tell us about some of your favorites?
Sure, I can do that. So as mentioned, we have a class and job system. And a big reason for that was due to one of the core things I wanted to address. Because I've seen plenty of official and unofficial Final Fantasy tribute TTRPGs in my life.
Indeed.
And a big problem that I've had is that a lot of them very much skew towards Final Fantasy VI. Now, let me be clear. I've got nothing against FF6. I love it to death. However, I'm well aware that there are whole generations of people who have more of a connection to other entries in the series. You have a whole generation for whom their biggest connection is going to be 7. You've got a whole generation for whom their biggest connection is going to be 10 or 13. And I feel they should be accommodated.
Indeed. And like 14 is an entire, movement. It's in its own,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one of their most successful games of all time, I think it's fair to say.
Oh, certainly the most successful comeback. But
yeah,
there's a whole generation for whom 14 was their entry point. And what I wanted to do was create a fantasy without compromise. Now, getting where this ties into the class and job system is the fact that when it comes to classes, we only have 4 of them: warrior, expert, mage, adept. Those are essentially a chassis. They form a backbone of what in a broad sense your character is developing. They determine your HP, your MP growth, your starting amount of skills that you've got trained, and one of your limit breaks. There's a couple other things, but the point is that they're a chassis. You're not getting anything that you can do from your choice of class.
Indeed. It really is from the jobs. The famous Final Fantasy 3-5 tactics job system that we've all sort of grown to enjoy over the years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are between the core book and the expanded Ultimania guide, there are a total of 60 jobs. The majority of them are assigned to one of the 4 classes. Again, warrior, expert, mage, and adept. For classes to represent 4 crystals. And those 4 classes are a nod to the original 4 broad archetypes from the Returners series. And warrior represents the earth crystal. Expert represents the wind crystal. Mage represents the fire crystal, and adept represents the water crystal. And
yep, we're always coming back to those crystals in all the Final Fantasy games.
Yeah,
starting with the first one.
Mythos, not setting, was one of the watchwords that I had throughout the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
And you are assigning yourselves 3 jobs. Normally, you can assign a 4th one if you take the full buy-in option, but that's another story. Those jobs will progress at a slow, medium, or fast rate. The features are divided into 7 tiers known as circles. Some of them only give you one feature each circle. Some of them give you 2 or more. But it's always divided among those circles. And those circles are developed on a 3-level stagger between fast progression, medium progression, and slow progression. You also have an unofficial 4th progression set up for magic items, but that's a different matter entirely. And
indeed,
the only rule when it comes to what you can and can't pick is at least one of the jobs you pick has to be associated with your class. So if you pick warrior as a class, at least one of your jobs has to be a warrior job. It doesn't have to be your first one. It doesn't have to be the one with fast progression, but one of them has to be it.
And it does. I enjoy how in the book it shows you take a lot of the main characters, a lot of the playable characters, and show how they've mixed their various jobs together to make them what they are. Like, Cecil has both Paladin and Dark Knight, and I think Tifa had Brawler and Dervish and something else. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head.
Monk, Dynamo,
it's a good way to
Dervish
visualize it.
was Tifa's spread.
Yeah.
And
it's so how about, obviously I would think that you're a monk guy, right? But maybe that's not your favorite job.
Some of my favorites are the ones where we came up with a way to do something that was in the theme, but in a unique way. One particular example that comes to mind is Fencer. Now, Fencer is all about literally the I challenge you to a duel job.
Yep.
They're about forcing an enemy to focus on them. Both them and the enemy get bonuses to attacking each other and penalties to attacking anybody else.
Oh, cool.
In the same vein, I also enjoy Sentinel because the intent with Sentinel was to have someone be a tank, but have them want to be the tank by giving them means to do so. But in addition to that, I very much enjoy what we did with Illusionist, which is basically trap card the spellcaster, and Squire, which is deceptively useful.
Just like in Final Fantasy Tactics, right? Let me ask you this: does the Squire get the Scream ability?
No.
Oh, okay.
So, and this is where I have to highlight a particular difference between the way the job system has worked in a lot of the games and the way I had to do it. Because of the whole track system, a multi-role kind of job would overcomplicate things. So our approach was that each job instead of them being multi-purpose, which you can do when you have a singular class, like in a lot of games that use classes, the multi-purposeness comes from your combination.
Yeah.
So I looked at Squire and I saw Squire is kind of a team player, whether it be the Squire in Tactics or some of these Squire-like abilities that are part of Tidus's native part of the sphere grid in Final Fantasy X. I looked at a lot of things that were useful but not exactly showy, and a lot of working as part of the team. And that's what prompted me to do the whole they're a support archetype, that their kit is very dependent on the party that they're with.
Okay, so they can kind of flex out what they do based on their party members.
Yeah, it means, because I was a big fan of the Warlord class in D&D 4th edition, of that frontline commander archetype.
That was a pretty cool class. I've actually included some ideas from that into one of the classes in Skies. It's kind of too bad it evaporated as a base class after 4th edition, at least as far as I know.
Well, it pretty much has. Some people try and say the Battlemaster Fighter or the College of War Bard fill the role, but they don't, because both of those are passive. There is the the analogy that I use for what the warlord or the frontline commander should be is a barbarian hits you with his axe. A warlord hits you with his barbarian. The team is your weapon. And
Yes.
we do kind of have that with the general job. But in the same vein, we have the mimic, but using the mimic as it is in, say, Final Fantasy V was not going to be feasible. So the approach we took instead is that they copycat their allies' stuff. So it's again on that theme of they are the way that they're going to succeed or fail is how they understand the dynamic of the party.
Yeah, that's cool. It's good to be able to translate some of those video game concepts into tabletop, which seems like it might not always be the easiest thing to do. Did you have I see you've already talked about some of the challenges there, but one thing I noticed in particular was that that when we talk about limit breaks, right? They don't function really the way, from what I saw. I didn't look at every job, but it seems like they act more as like a battle wide buff to the character rather than a big attack like most of the ones from like FF7 and 8. So why go that route with them?
So there are a few reasons for that. One of them is the FFD6 and a couple others had done the limit break as an uber attack that you build up. But the D20 version didn't. It gave you a special ability that was an extension of your class that had a limited amount of charges. But the approach I took was a uber attack is just going to be an attack with numbers go up, and numbers going up as a feature in of itself was something I was trying my best to avoid. I was trying to have it that character development has height and width. And I remember the game breaker feature, as it was called, that's in with a lot of the classes in a game called Fantasy Craft, which I cite as a major inspiration. This Fantasy Craft is really, really good. And the idea of limit break as a cheat, essentially, of doing what that job already does, just better, is what came to mind. And there was already kind of a desperation move approach with limit breaks twice, in Final Fantasy VI and in 8.
Yes, I remember that in Final Fantasy VI. Most people probably don't even know that they were in that game when it comes right down to it. But all of a sudden,
the RNG to get it was so low.
Yeah, all of a sudden, you hit the attack button so many times in that game, but at one point you do it when you're at 10% HP, and all of a sudden you have an attack that does 10 times the normal amount of damage or something like that. And it has a cool animation to it. But yeah, that was seemingly the genesis of limit breaks, was actually in Final Fantasy VI, not Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah,
but I like the route that you've gone with that, because while it might be fairly hype to have this big attack that you describe, it's not going to have the same impact as it would if you're watching it, this fully rendered cutscene that plays out when you do them, right?
Yeah, and obviously we don't have the cutscenes, so you take that out and you just have an Omni Slash is just a stronger attack. It's just a stronger basic attack, and that's not going to be as interesting.
And you just what do you say to that? Are you going to describe it the same way every time it happens? It's it's not quite as much fun, And how would you even describe an Omni Slash to make it sound cool? It's like you hits him and he hits him and he hits him and he hits him, and that's pretty much it. Pardon me. Oh my goodness. But yeah, I like this. Seems like a good way to go with limit breaks. And remind me real quick, how are they activated? Is it like Is there a gauge that builds up, or like boxes that you check off, or?
I didn't want to do a gauge because I felt because a gauge is yet another thing for players to track, and
Hmm.
depending on depending on their job, the job spread that they have, they possibly may have 5 things that they're tracking: HP,
Hmm.
MP, and possibly 3 different resources from their jobs.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to add to that pile. Instead, it is something that you activate when you're below half health. It lasts for the rest of the encounter, but you cannot stack it. You've got 4 potential limit breaks you can take. You have to pick one of them.
Right. And that it's good to have those options, not having to wait until you're like level 60 to unlock that fourth, or that third or fourth limit break.
No.
Um yeah. So give them a lot of options, choose the best one for the situation. No, I
Hmm.
think that works well. Um so I seems like a good way to adapt Final Fantasy to a a tabletop situation without letting it well keep the flavor, but not the necessarily the things that work better in a video game.
Yeah.
And I was when thinking about the way limit breaks work, they almost seem to be more like they function a little bit like the trances in Final Fantasy IX. Only maybe you can control when you do them. That was one of the issues with trance
Control
in
when you do
FF9 was
them.
that.
Uh, I
Hmm,
have, yeah, I have some. I've had some issues with the way trance was designed. Namely, the math is one of them. The fact that it auto activates when the gauge is full,
yep.
and the fact that the impact of trance was not consistent. You've got some characters like say Zidane, who completely changes his fighting style, and
Hmm.
on the other hand, and you've got some characters who get a bit of a boost, like say Vivi and Aiko, who get double casting. And then you've got characters like Steiner or Amarant, who you probably won't even notice that their changes, especially with Steiner.
Yeah.
Steiner's Steiner's transform just triples his strength, and Amarant's transform just has it that his throws target all enemies instead of one target.
Yeah. And what good is that if you're going up against a
Boss.
one single target boss?
Mhm.
So
And
folks, I love FF9. I list it as one of my favorites, but that particular part of it, not so much.
yeah, there are there are there are plenty of things I like about nine, and plenty of things I don't like. I have gotten myself in some guff for the fact that I was very critical of the way the AP and learning from equipment thing worked. I feel
Mm,
like it's in the wrong kind of. I feel like that approach is something that is better served in a non-linear equipment system.
sure.
Also, whoever designed Ozma, I and the math behind Ozma, I want them keelhauled.
Yeah. Boy, and I have to admit, I never fought that particular super boss, but
Ozma cheats.
yeah.
He cheats the way the CPU in an RTS game cheats. I'll put it that way.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's no fun, folks.
Mhm.
But this is fun chatting about the things that are beefs with, like 25-year-old games now, or I guess probably more than that, 30-year-old games now.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, speaking of some of those games,
Mhm.
you put in a few different ways that you an optional magic casting and leveling systems from
Mhm.
6, 7, 8, and 10, which would be
Yeah.
for those keeping track, magicite, materia, um, whatever you would call it, junctioning in 8,
Mhm.
and then sphere grid in 10.
Yeah.
So why put those in particular? Is it just because they're of the game? They were popular games, or you just thought there was something interesting you could do with those, or
It's more of the latter, and
hmm,
the whole thing started when there was the question of how we would handle. uh, materia. And I looked at other folks' attempt at doing materia, and I wasn't satisfied with it. The big problem I often had was that their attempt at materia felt like the equivalent of a gem system that you would see in Diablo. And I don't think that's what people are asking for. I resisted doing it for a while because I wanted to establish a baseline before I did that. And I don't remember where the idea came to me, but then the idea of treating materia as these micro talent trees came to be. I think it may have been from reading through Spheres of Power, which I was reading through at the time. That is a very interesting casting alternative for both Pathfinder and D&D 5e, which is more about talent trees than a spell list. And once I figured that out, I started putting together how I could handle materia, and it being based on this kind of tree setup where you get a few points automatically based on a relevant ability score, and then AP that you can spend. Now, stat modifiers for materia, like it is in 7, I knew that was never going to work. That's just way too granular for what this is. And a similar thing applies to the materia levels up, not the player. Those kind of things were never in the cards. Instead, again, it's more about focusing on the spirit of it rather than the letter. And eventually we came up with the trees that you end up seeing, which was a combination of a lot of the job features that we already had developed.
Right. And, if you did do it with, putting AP into materia every time you finish a battle or gain XP or however you dole it out, you run into the AP problem from FF9 all over again.
Yeah.
And
which is something I wanted to avoid.
Yeah.
And once I figured that out, I started figuring out how to handle Magicite. I knew that I did not want to use the whole gamut of Magicite that was in 6. I wanted to keep it to the roster of Eidolons that I had already established.
Yes.
That, and there's a handful of Magicite in 6 that's kind of redundant. Looking at you, Crusader.
Yeah. Oh, and let me just point out that you do have a pretty hefty roster of Eidolons already. Isn't it like 16 or something?
Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
It's all the ones you want to see, folks, basically. So from the basic 3, Ifrit, Shiva, Ramu, up to Bahamut, Knights of the Round.
Yeah.
So
I wanted at least one representative of each of the major elements. At least one or two that represented physical, one or two that represented magical, and some of them I had to shift around their particular theming. For example, one spell that did not make the cut is the gravity spells. So things like Demi, Gravitia, those didn't make the cut because the sliding design that we have for spells, a percentage system didn't fit.
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
Instead, Diabolos, instead of having gravity spells, is the representative of the shadow element.
Yes.
Doubling down on his title that he's had in 8, 11, and I think 14 as well, as the Lord of Nightmares.
Yes.
And instead, Hades becomes the debuff representative, as opposed to
okay
shadow damage. A lot of the stuff he's associated with is doing debuffs, like doing poison, like doing blindness, all that kind of stuff. And that applies just as much to the spells associated with him in Magicite. The one Eidolon that almost got cut until I figured out a way to do it was Eden.
Okay.
Because Eden has only appeared in 8, and I was trying to figure out how to do it until I saw how Eden is portrayed in 14, and an idea came to me.
So wait, are you a 14 player or
Off and on.
off and on? Okay.
And
I am not. So, well, I played a little bit um, a while ago. Um, Stopped playing once a relationship ended that had caused me to start playing, but that's another story.
yeah,
Um, Seems like I know that isn't in that game aren't the what are the Eidolons called? They're called
primals.
primals, and you usually fight them, right, instead of
Mhm.
summoning them.
A summoner can summon a miniaturized version of some of them, but it's on a as well as scholars, but it's on a limited basis. The full on
Okay.
primals are bosses, and on some level, or on some level, some of them are representatives of the different beast tribes.
Okay.
A few of them are wild cards, but they're almost like gods that you would see in Discworld in the sense that they are fueled by belief.
Okay.
As,
So you've got the beast tribes that worship them, and
Mhm.
then they come to life. Oh, that's why I do know about Good King Mogglmog and the Mughals trying to make their own primal with enough belief, right? That's what that's all about, I believe.
Yeah, it in that regard, I'd say it's similar to the way gods work in Discworld as well as the
Mm-hmm.
chaos gods in Warhammer,
Yep.
because they can mark somebody to force them to believe in them.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, others don't do it. Like, even though you can fight against Ramu, he's not exactly hostile.
Okay.
Um, there are some primals that I may consider revisiting for future things, like Ravana just wants a proper fight.
Okay. Doesn't have a grudge like some of the others do, it seems.
No, uh, and you did have that whole thing of Ishgard trying to make their own primal through the Knights of the Round, but
Mm.
that's a whole other story. And when I saw the way Eden was described as this primal light, and a lot of the spawn of Eden comes off like angels, but not necessarily benevolent. Uh,
Mm.
that
Right. Well, that's been a theme in Final Fantasy for a while. You know, even like Sephiroth is like kind of a infernal angel, right? Um, things that we would consider to be in the Christian faith would consider to be benevolent are not so in a Final Fantasy game. Where often God is not your friend.
uh, I'm pretty sure you've seen the meme of biblically accurate angels and how people looking at them tend to get driven crazy.
Yeah.
The irony of
Cthulhu angels.
them
Yeah.
saying "Be not afraid" when they look like something out of your nightmares.
Yeah.
But it's through that I was able to figure out what to do with Eden, and doing I've seen some there might be some people who might argue, why is Gilgamesh a summon? Oh,
Hmm.
I felt
Well,
I
he was
felt
in
that,
six, if I remember right.
yeah, he was, and
Mhm.
I felt that there was an opportunity to do something with it, so that I didn't want Odin to be the sole combat representative, the
Yeah.
sole physical combat representative of it, and Gilgamesh was a ideal spot to slot into. Uh,
All right, and of course he was an eight as well with that famous scene with Odin and Seifer.
mhm. You've what is amusing about Gilgamesh to me is that even though he has the name of the legendary Sumerian king, one of the original bromances in mythological history. Yes,
Gilgamesh and Enkidu. Yep.
yeah, it is a bromance, and I will hear no argument otherwise. Um, also the moral of the story is bros before hoes, but I'm getting at it.
Ooh.
Yeah, I get a bit spicy. But
Okay.
you look at the design of Gilgamesh over the years, and the parallel is Musashibo Benkei
Mm.
from the Tale of Genji. And this is something that I really wanted to focus on that has always fascinated me with Final Fantasy as a whole. This constant referencing and calling to different mythologies and integrating that into this combined whole that's greater than the sum of its parts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as why I bring up Gilgamesh, or I bring up Benkei with Gilgamesh, think about this. His primary weapon is a naginata. His
Mm-hmm.
usual appearance looks like something a kabuki actor would wear.
Indeed.
You first fight. He is obsessed with collecting weapons, and the first time you fight him on a big bridge.
Indeed.
All of
Where
that
he throws
is straight
is
up.
that is that where he pulls out Excalibur?
That has been one of the gags where he'll randomly pull out a weapon, and sometimes it's Excalibur.
Yeah.
But all that I referenced, that's straight from the Tale of Genji.
Mm.
Benkei was a monk who was obsessed with collecting 1,000 swords from 1,000 duels and challenging every samurai who crossed his bridge to a duel until he met Yoshitsune and lost and pledged his services to Yoshitsune.
Yes.
The big reason he kept winning those duels is he was described as so ugly that samurai didn't want to look at his face and were distracted, which gave him easy wins. It was also the reason why when he protected his master when he was committing seppuku, even though he got shot with a bunch of arrows, nobody wanted to approach him, and they didn't because they didn't know if he was actually dead. Which is where you get the legend of Benkei stuck with arrows and dead standing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, Gilgamesh, fan favorite character for a reason. Also a lot of fun in the Dissidia games when you run across him there too. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to ask about the row system, which I think should be familiar to most people who have played a Final Fantasy game, or at least the old school ones from the first one all the way up to like the 10th one. You definitely have rows in all those. So could you tell us a little bit about the row formation system?
Mm-hmm. Now, first off, I do want to clarify, we stopped seeing the row specifically as a setup in 7. 7 was the last 7 was the last one that did it. They brought it back in 9 and 10.
Oh, right.
They hadn't.
Okay.
Now, the reason why I did it is multifaceted. One of them is genre emulation, because as mentioned, I'm trying to emulate the entirety of the franchise and taking from every entry in some form or another, even taking from things like side games and cut content. Through that, we found out 9 at one point was going to have the job system. And there are concept arts of that are in circulation. It obviously didn't. And as far as why, that could have been for any number of reasons. But since there's only a small bit of concept art of it, I think it was something that was pitched very early on and didn't stick. And the reason it could have stuck, there's a bunch of reasons why things get cut in development. But
indeed,
the other reason was I wanted to free up the space that grid combat would take to do other things with the combat system. And I wanted to address an issue that I'd had with how grid combat has kind of evolved over the decades.
Yeah.
I made a stray comment about this a few months ago on Twitter, but I liken it to the difference between college football and NFL football. In the sense that in college, you see these very you see these very spread out formations and a lot of gunslinger heavy offense. You also see the same thing up in Canada, but in the NFL, you see these more tightly packed defensive focused formations. And where I draw this into the grid combat conundrum is in the early days, you had the grid combat in dungeons. Very, very restricted movement, a bigger importance on the marching order, and all of that. But as
Indeed.
time has gone on, we've seen more and more adventures and the like that have grid combat as set pieces. But the movement economy is still using that tight dungeon corridor approach. And given the fact that this is meant to be setting agnostic, I felt that trying to force it into one or the other didn't make sense. And I know one might bring up tactics, but I am of the belief that just because you're running a campaign in Evilise doesn't mean you need to do the same combat system verbatim that Tactics did.
No. And indeed, you don't have the battle mat at all in this system, from what I can tell. So you're not too worried about movement, except maybe from shifting to the front row to the back row, in some circumstances. So do you think that taking like the battle mat out of the equation, does that speed up combat, or does it have another kind of effect on the way people approach the system?
I would say it speed things up, and it also means that you don't have the risk of kicking circles or people having those movement options but not using them because they're in melee. And in a lot of games that have those grid combats, they're very disincentivized to get out of melee once they're in it. Those kind of things I was trying to avoid. And there's also the issue that you've got some entries in the series that have full freeform movement, like the MMOs, like 12, like 15 and 16, and then you have stuff like 13 that, even though that has very dynamic character movement, is still using a row setup.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to free up the focus to the actions that matter, and I won't necessarily say speed up combat. I know that's a big buzzword among a lot of designers, but more trim the fat, as it were.
Yeah, that makes sense, because you're putting the casters where they want to be. You're putting the melee fighters where they want to be. To simplify it down a little bit. I know it's a little more complex with that, and there's different. I also noticed that based on the weapon that you choose, you can target different rows. And that's fun, and that's cool too. Gives you makes you consider your strategy a little bit when you're putting your character together to begin with. And makes you think about where you're going to be, how you're going to affect the rest of the party, and so forth. But I do like that idea. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Please go ahead.
Trying to focus on a party instead of a group of individuals was a big deal for me.
Yeah, and that shows. It's because you really have to, in a game like Final Fantasy, teamwork matters, right? You got to have the DPS, you got to have the healer. They all have to cast things and use their abilities at the right time to complement each other. And did you have that in mind when you were? It seems like you had that in mind when you were.
Well, very much so. Yeah. I didn't put it in the inspirations list, but one major point of inspiration was a project by a friend of mine named Tanner called Heavens and Heresies, which started out as a 5e hack that really, really doubled down on team play, in the sense that every single class had some sort of cooperative element. Just as an example, let's consider the 5e sorcerer. You know, meta magic, spontaneous casting, all that jazz.
Yeah.
His version of it had meta magic, but it wasn't limited to just targeting themselves or targeting their own spells. They could use meta magic on their allies' stuff to boost them, or use it on the enemies to screw over their castings.
Hmm.
In the same vein, you have things like the ranger, who, instead of having a favorite enemy in that system, had it that they can grant different buffs based on environment and based on the kind of trophies that they bring. It implemented a kind of trophy system that they can harvest and support allies with.
Okay, that's cool. I like that. It's like a bit almost, it feels a little bit the way you describe it, like the Geomancer from FF Tactics.
Yeah,
You know,
and of course we do have the Geomancer. I did get a bit of pushback with the fact that Geomancer is not a mage job, but rather an adept.
no, I see that easily. You know, it's Geomancer was, what did you even have to have like black mage levels to get it in Tactics? I don't recall the way it went, but I think it was more. I remember having monks that were spec'd into Geomancer.
Yeah,
for instance.
And Geomancer has only been a traditional caster once, and that was in 5. Every other time, Geomancy has not been considered magic. And part of the reason I did it that way is if I did a traditional spell list, no matter how you slice it, that is a spell list where at any given time you're only using the minority of it.
Yeah. That is very true. Hey, we've been going for about 50 minutes or so. Do you need a break or anything, or
No, I'm good
to talk a little more?
I am good. I am good. This is what I do. This is what I do every minute of every day. So I am
pretty much. Yeah, I know you do. You stream a lot. I definitely noticed. So.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, I wanted to talk about boss monsters a little bit. So, and like damage and so forth. So one of the nice things about your stat blocks is that you can like scale up the monster to the party, right? You have like what the monster's stats are, levels 1 through 20. Very cool. Love that. But some of these boss monsters, especially like at level 20, they've got some pretty deep HP pools. So depending, I guess my question is, what's the difference between the amount of damage a PC can do at first level compared to like 20th level? Because we're, Final Fantasy and JRPGs in general known for huge damage totals, but our little peanut brains aren't good at calculating all those thousands of damage. So like you must have scaled it down a little bit, right?
Yeah, it is scaled to a point, and to that end, there's a few things to note. One of them is the fact that your first off, you are auto scaling as you go up. Every 5 levels, your weapon attacks get an additional die of their particular type. There's also the fact that you can get additional damage through what we call the extra effort rule, which is one of my favorite things we put in. The extra effort rule was my way of having it that even that light weapons are still a viable option instead of just automatically being replaced by a weapon with a heavier damage output.
Yep.
Because what it means is that light weapons can do a lot of damage, but they can't do it consistently. Whereas heavier weapons can do damage with a higher floor but a lower ceiling.
Okay.
So that ends up being a choice that you have to make. And when it comes to spells, it naturally scales up. Just as an example, casting fire at 9th rank is 3d12 damage. and that is in addition to any extra effort you might roll, since there is a rule of 3 when it comes to it. And I suppose I should get into that. The way extra effort works is every few points above defense, you add an additional d4 to damage. For light weapons and for spells, it's 3 points. For the heaviest weapons, it's 5.
Okay, so another choice you think about when you're choosing what kind of weapon to wield.
Yeah, and things like damage vulnerability, instead of reducing the total damage, what it does is increasing the total damage. What it does is it maximizes damage dice. So if a target has damage vulnerability 1 to fire, and you hit them with a fire spell, then one of those damage die isn't rolled. It's just treated as the max number.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Damage resistance works in the opposite way.
Take one, treat it as the lowest.
Yep, you take one of them, you treat it as a 1.
And so if you have fire resistance 3 and you're rolling 3 dice, 3 damage.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Now, extra effort die is exempt to that rule, but again, it is very much dependent on how you roll. And I do want to note that because of the scaling approach, part of the reason I wanted to do that is I didn't want fire to just automatically be replaced by Fira or Firaga. The reason you'd use Fira or Firaga or Firaja is that they are more multi-target spells, but have a higher floor.
Right. I did notice that Firaja is all targets.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Fire is a single target. Fira is 1 plus d4 targets in the same row. Firaga is 1 plus d6 targets in the same row. And Firaja is all enemies.
Cool. So it definitely sounds like you can have some battles with the GM can put in a lot of like goblins or something, and you can use your spells strategically to wipe out wide swaths of them if you wanted to.
Yeah, especially since you have to put in a degree of care to what spells you end up taking, because you do have a spell slot approach for the most part. You have, depending on your level and depending on one of your base stats, you have a certain amount of equip slots for spells.
Okay, so not MP. You
do have MP, but you have before you go out adventuring, you have a number of spells you have to equip. Right. And you're always going to have more spells than you can feasibly do. It is 1/4 your level, plus your magic combat modifier, which physical and magical combat modifiers are going to be determined by your class.
Okay.
If you pick mage, it's every other level you get a spell slot. And because of that, you do have to pick what you're going to bring with you. And if you depending on which job you pick, you might have to abide by certain restrictions. For example, red mage, if you have that as one of your jobs, you get access to black and white magic, but you have to pick one of each at minimum.
Okay.
Scholar, if you pick one of the paired spell lists that it has, you have to have one representative of those spell lists. The only exception to the rule is blue mages. A blue mage can cast any spell that it knows.
Okay.
Now grab a cushion, because here's where the butt comes in. It's still a blue mage.
Yeah, that's true. Because my experience with blue mages has been either they're not very effective or their spells are hard to come by.
The only way you're getting blue magic spells is by either getting hit with them or using the blue mage's Libra feature to learn them.
Okay. So you can cast Libra and do it in a different way, because I remember with Quistis and Strago and Kamari, you always had to get hit by it first.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to include some support blue mage spells, so that's what Libra is for.
And Libra is a super useful spell.
Yeah. In this case, it's not a spell; it's a feature.
Okay.
But the approach is if you get hit with it, you learn it automatically. If you use Libra, it is a dice roll to learn the spell, but you don't have to run the risk of getting hit with the spell.
Yeah. So no worries about getting hit by a trine in that case or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to take the risk, it's on you, but your choice means your consequence.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, here's a question I have that's just for me. Okay, this is just for me.
Mm-hmm.
Chat, take a seat. This. Hopefully, you get something out of it. But if you don't, well, I mean, I got to be a little bit selfish. You got to give me this one. Okay. So I do happen to know that I looked at the monk class. I noted that has blitzes as one of its possibilities,
Mm-hmm.
and you also have NPC stats for the Phantom Train.
Yes.
So, do you know where I'm going with this?
Yes, I do. And the answer to that question is on page 64 of the book.
And what does it say?
On page 64, one of the mudras you can take is suplex.
All right. So that's what I like to hear. Mm-hmm. And I assume that weight doesn't really come into it. What you can suplex.
I don't have a weight rule because I wanted something just as ridiculous as some of the stuff I had done. And I've spoken of the story of Los Tiburon, the shark of the land, who suplexed the dragon. I have enjoyed the meme of Mike Haggard doing a pile driver on Galactus when MVC3 came out. That sort of ridiculousness I wanted to go with.
Cool.
And there were some who had said that the monk was over designed because of the fact it has both blitzes and mudras.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, it's on kind of a loop that was loosely inspired by FF14 and a few other things.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to see it in there. I'm glad that we can suplex phantom trains. It does my heart good to know that was taken into account when making this game.
Now,
so
it's not going to be an automatic thing because you still have to do with suplex the way I have it. You still have to do a blitz in order to pull it off.
Okay.
And you still have to spend chakra. That's kind of the loop. You use blitzes to gain chakra. You spend chakra on mudras. And then the cycle repeats.
Okay. But suplex is a blitz.
Suplex is a mudra.
Oh, it is. Okay. I just thought, because of Sabin, I just thought it might be a blitz.
Yeah. The idea with blitzes is that you're essentially rolling to try and hit 3 times. And depending on how many times you hit, you get some extra effect on your attack roll.
Okay.
For example, and each of them is essentially a form. So for example, Crusader form, you roll 3 d20s as if you're rolling 3 attacks, and you see how many times you succeeded. You get 1 success, you get an additional weapon die. You get 2 successes, you get 2 weapon die. You get all 3 of them succeed, you have a total of 3 extra weapon die. And each time you succeed at a blitz, you get 1 point of chakra. You can hold up to 7 of them. For each point of chakra you have, you get a +1 to your attack rolls when you're doing a blitz. If you take damage, you lose 1 point of chakra.
All right. So really, if you're gonna be using your mudras, you gotta be focusing on doing your blitzes.
Yep.
Okay. Makes sense. I'm fine with. I'm fine. Seems like a fun system. I'd try a monk out.
Yeah, and remember that's one of your 3 jobs in that case.
Right. That is true because you have a lot of options, it seems, in this system, like, the class and the 3 jobs. So there you go, folks.
Yeah. And to tie back to the whole thing with limit break, the monk's limit break just has it that any even die that you roll as blitzes, regardless of what the result would be, is treated as a hit.
Oh, cool.
If all 3 of them were evens and none of them would have been considered hits, then it doesn't work. You just miss.
Okay. So you have to have at least 1 hit, then all the evens add from there.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
It's essentially raising the floor for your blitzes, or putting a giant neon sign saying, "You should always be blitzing if you're playing monk, idiot."
Yep. I mean, would you ever do anything with Sabin aside from a blitz? He can learn magic, but why?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, one of the things that a lot of people remember about Final Fantasy, in addition to like the spiky haired heroes and the beautiful heroines, are the scenery chewing villains.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I was glad to see that you put some guidelines for creating your own combat NPCs in the game. So was it a challenge to create like a make your own boss system, your own end boss system, or I guess regular boss system?
So I ended up designing a NPC creation system before I even made the bestiary.
Okay.
The bestiary is essentially which is the enemy intel field guide, as well as the smaller bestiary in the core book, is a collection of 200 pre-gens essentially that are built off of the mechanics of that creation system that we made. Now, some of this was inspired. Well, some of this was drawing from Fantasy Craft. Some of it was drawing from the fact that our predecessors had a monster creation system, and I wanted 2 things out of it. One of them was divorcing set levels when it came to monsters, because I wanted to get rid of the monsters that were just souped up versions of previous ones. Like Grenade is just a stronger version of Bomb, or Red Cap is just a stronger version of Goblin. That was something I wanted to get rid of. At the same time, the bigger threats are the ones that are more complex rather than the ones that have higher numbers.
Okay.
And each add-on that you put in adds to, whether it's a positive or negative thing, adds to the treasure die rule. Treasure die is how you get resources to utilize the resource check, the acquisition roll, and that's how you're gonna be getting items. Because I wanted the act of getting items to be as much of a game as everything else.
That's a good idea.
So that because a lot of people will go whole campaigns without doing any item shopping, and for a Final Fantasy game, that's just not acceptable.
No. No, I agree.
So I ended up taking a note from things like the wealth check that D20 Modern had, as well as the faction checks that Eclipse Phase has for the Gil and treasure rolls.
Cool. Well, I didn't look up so are there I didn't check this out. Are there there must be tables for some of this equipment then, right?
Yes. We don't have a set weapon list. We instead have the tag-based design where you're creating a custom weapon. Everybody's creating a custom weapon. If you have fighter as one of your jobs, you're creating more custom weapons for yourself than anyone else.
Because like you're Furion and the weapon master uses all those flying weapons. That was the fighter, right? Or am I thinking of something else?
Yeah, fighter is meant to be the walking arsenal. Weapon master is meant to be the polar opposite. They focus on one weapon.
Right. Okay.
And a big reason I did that is you often hear the selling point of the fighter is, oh, you can equip any weapon. But because of the action drain, but on switching weapons, which I got rid of. Switching weapons is just you spend your action.
Mhm.
Depending on how you built your character, you might be able to do that for free. Instead, a lot of people will pick one way they equip their character and largely stick to it.
Mm.
So the idea of fighter being a walking arsenal after Furion was born. They start with three. They start with a total of three more. By the time they hit the capstone, they have 10 weapons.
Seems a little like Noctis too, if I'm thinking about it. You know, the
Yeah.
Armiger.
Yeah, and we do have Noctis represented with a couple of the independent jobs, but
Mm.
the other part of it is fighter can switch between weapons easily and do certain combos that have him using multiple weapons in a multi-hit attack. And his limit
Yeah.
break just has it that you treat all of your fighter weapons as if they're all equipped.
Cool.
So essentially, you can use any of your weapons without having to switch.
Oh, that is nice.
Mhm.
Yeah. And yeah, there's yeah. I'm just thinking
Mhm.
about the various characters that reminds me of.
Yeah.
But okay, I got another one that's just for me. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So, you know, one of my online identities is that I'm the Sky Pirate guy, right?
Mhm.
That's what my game's about. So, I was interested to see that in your Ultimania expansion, you include some airship combat.
Yes.
So makes sense. Final Fantasy, almost pretty much every main series game has an airship. So I have
Mhm.
to ask, how does the airship combat play out in practice?
So I will note that airships and airship combat was something that was considered for the core book, but
Hmm.
I felt it was too, because of the fact that there are some games that don't even use airships. I felt it was too contextual, and and the book was big enough as it was. I felt that adding it in there would be too much.
Most of the games, if they have airships combat featured, it's in a cutscene. Like FF12, for instance, has a
And
big. Towards the end, you have a big airship fleet battle.
around the time that I was coming up with the idea of it, I was watching an anime from the early 2000s called Last Exile.
Yeah, I've seen Last Exile.
And seeing that and seeing the way battleship combat worked, as well as my experiences with games like Nostalgia and Skies of Arcadia,
Mhm.
an idea began to form. And the approach that I took was, instead of having airships just be a jumped up version of regular combat, I wanted
Mhm.
to reinforce the idea of the party is controlling this one ship, the way you'd see a combat scene in, say, Star Trek. Uh,
Mm.
you know, you have every party member is doing a role. Some of those roles will have special actions. It depends on the rating of the airship, which rating is essentially scale. Like
Yep.
a low rating entry would be, say, the Regalia Type F from 16, whereas a much bigger one would be, say, the Ragnarok from 8, which is a full-on spaceship.
Yeah.
Uh,
The lunar whale, perhaps.
yeah, those kind of things, uh, because they're meant to house a lot of people, a lot of equipment, and basically be a mobile base, which is another thing that airships tend to be, and that was something I felt needed to be addressed as well. But it works in for fate. Combat within airships works in a phase system instead of the usual actions. You have the casting phase, where players and NPCs use spells. In order to use spells on airships, that spell Not spell that airship has to have the amplification sigil as one of its upgrades.
Yeah.
The battery phase, where you can perform ranged attacks if you have the proper setup, and the bigger the grade of airship, the more potential ranged attacks it can do. Then you have the fighter phase, which is how you do melee attacks. I was re-envisioning melee attacks as like from a squadron of fighters.
Yep. Makes sense. Or like drones or something like that, or
yeah, or the way say the an Imperial dreadnought is crawling with TIE fighters.
Yeah.
And finally, the maintenance phase, which has non-combat actions, but you can only do one of them.
Okay. Whether it's like fixing things that are broken or maybe giving a buff or something like that. Okay.
Oh. You can also, the maintenance phase also has things like the charged attack, which works the same way as charged attacks in the core combat. Though, in order to do it, you need to have certain roles active, and that's kind of the thing. The complexity of your airship is all going to be dependent on the grade of the airship, and because the airship's rating determines how many points you can spend on upgrades and potentially rolls. The more points, the bigger budget you have to spend on those upgrades, and that can be different facilities. That can be things like weapon systems. That can be things like putting in crew to help out with things, or armor to take more hits. And of course,
yeah, that definitely has reminded me of Skies of Arcadia a bit there.
Yeah. And of course, even with all of that, you still have to get a ship.
Yeah.
Which is a treasure type role, and the lowest would be a scout class, and that's a TN of 30.
Okay.
The airship rules are an evolution of the holding rules that are in the core book.
Okay.
And so once I figured out how to do that, then I figured out how to use that to do mecha, and that's the War Machina handbook in Ultimania came to be.
Yeah, indeed. I didn't have a look at that one, but it certainly does make sense. Is that you take any like Xeno series inspiration there?
No, I wanted to keep it to Final Fantasy, but we were able to draw upon a lot of references. There were some early mech references that we had, but we replaced those with ones that were closer to the source material.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I noticed you do have a little bit of Kingdom Hearts inspiration in the Ultimania too, though. I noticed there were some Keyblade specific jobs that were available in there.
Yeah. So Matt had a icon for a Keyblade class from the project that he was working on. And when he had presented that to me, I was already pretty far into how the jobs had been designed at that point. And I told him, when I figure out the right angle to do a Keyblade, then I'll do it. I ended up doing 2 because I realized that there were 2 possibilities to go with. And the tricky part was trying to do this kind of Venn diagram with all the different mechanics that have shown up in Kingdom Hearts.
Right.
So I split it into 2. Keybearer of Mastery is largely inspired by Birth by Sleep and Kingdom Hearts 3.
Yeah.
Keybearer of Dawn is largely inspired by Riku in the series, but especially how he plays in 2 onward.
Okay.
The idea is, first off, instead of calling it Keyblade, I call it a Keybearer, because I wanted to reinforce that you could have a keyblade that is not a sword, much in the same way that instead of gun blade for gunbreaker, I have gun arm.
Oh, like for Barrett or something.
No. Think of say the gun hammer that you see in Monster Hunter, or some of the gunblade like weapons that aren't a sword.
Right. No, I know what you're talking about now, because I did look up the Gunbreaker and saw that enormous hammer with like the holes in it representing barrels. So
yeah. I was watching a mini doc on the Festival of the Exploding Hammers in San Juan de la Vega. And then some engineer decided to make a hammer with a hidden spot for a squib. Most people in the Festival of Exploding Hammers just attach hammers to firecrackers and hit the ground.
Yeah,
which is nice, but we can do better than that.
really scare the crap out of somebody.
Just take a, because I think you know what a squib is, right?
Isn't it like a blank, or?
Yeah, it's supposed to be a blank bullet. It fires like a normal bullet, but there's no bullet.
Right. Yeah, so it makes a huge sound when you smack it.
It's used in film to get the sound of a gun, to get the sound and smoke a gun without actually shooting somebody.
Yes, and what you get in trouble, a lot of trouble for, if you forget to put the right things in. The tragic effects.
Hi, Baldwin. How you doing?
Yeah, right.
But
oh man, so yeah, go ahead.
But the idea with the mastery was I didn't want to do drive forms as this alt form that you have a whole resource for. So instead, I used it as a momentum system. The idea is there are 5 drive forms. You can activate one of them. You can switch turns once per turn. Switching forms doesn't count as an action.
Okay.
But as you're in that form, you start to develop a drive level that gradually gives you these passive bonuses. And the forms that you have are Blitz, Guardian, Valor, and Wisdom.
Okay, sounds familiar.
Yeah. Blitz boosts a lot of maneuvers. Guardian boosts defense. Valor boosts attack. Wisdom boosts magic.
Yep. So you could be a little bit of Ventus, a little bit of Terra, a little bit of Aqua, depending on how your other jobs are set up, I would imagine.
Keybearer of Dawn does use a point setup, and it's one that I took a little bit of inspiration from when I first found out the core mechanic in Daggerheart, the Hope and Fear setup. Instead of rolling a d20 when you do attacks with a Keyblade as a Keybearer of Dawn, you instead roll 2d10. One of them is your light die, one of them is the dark die. Depending on which die had the higher result, determines whether you get a light or dark point from that attack.
Okay.
If you roll doubles, you get both. And you use those for the channel light and dark, where you can modify the base actions. And at higher tiers, you can consider light or darkness aligned based on how many more points of either you have. So in that regard, it was me taking a different spin on the balancing scale thing I was already doing for Red Mage. Okay. Since I know someone might say, why pick Black or White Mage when I can pick Red Mage and get access to both styles of magic? The answer to that is Black and White Mages can do things Red Mage can't.
Yep. And that's always been the case since Final Fantasy 1, so.
Yeah, but in FF1, it was just that Red Mage couldn't get access to the highest tier of spells, which is not how is not really something that works with how I'm doing things.
That's true. Yeah.
So instead, it's more of Black Mage is an elementalist. They can do more with elemental damage than everyone else. White Mage has access to weaponized healing and certain overhealing mechanics through things like the divine skills.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, they want to keep people topped up because they can turn excess amount of healing into holy damage.
Oh, nice. That is kind of cool. Overflow damage into like a miniature holy attack. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, geez, there is a lot in these all of these books. I was impressed with the amount of critters that were in the bestiary too. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of your favorites are going to be in there. A lot of common enemies, a lot of bosses. And, you know, I think you have NPCs that have like four different tiers of like foe you can have.
Yeah.
So
It is
that was
normal, notorious, boss, and end boss.
yeah. You got a comment in the chat that your voice roboted, but I think you're back to normal now, so I think we're good there. But there's obviously been a lot of work that's gone into adapting all this stuff. So how long? When did this project begin, and when did it all come out? I guess is my next question.
The earliest form of the project happened in May, about 5 years ago.
Okay, 2020.
The project as we have it here started about a year ago when we debuted the prototype at Sage. And technically speaking, this makes Legend Edition the first TTRPG to get a debut at Sage.
Cool.
And
go ahead.
And eventually we put out the 1.0 version. After a fair bit of feedback, we're working on a bunch of errata that's going to be in the 1.1 version.
Okay.
And in the last few months, I've been doing these monthly challenges on my Discord. Mainly design challenges because we definitely wanted this to be homebrew friendly.
Right.
Like when it comes to when people say, "Why don't you put in grid combat?" We say, "We have no plans on doing that, but if you want to homebrew that, go right ahead."
If you want to make it FF Tactics, go nuts.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to help you doing that, but you've got all the tools right in front of you, so use them.
Yep. Oh man. But you do, in addition to this, you're a pretty prolific streamer and reviewer. Is this not so? So my question to you, as somebody who reads a lot of games, reviews a lot of games, or a lot of TTRPGs, especially, is there anything that you've seen in the last couple of years that has really caught your eye for whatever reason? We're not looking for like a favorites list here. We're more looking for anything that you have found that you found really interesting that made you sit up and think, "Oh my goodness, I never considered that."
There's been quite a few over the years.
Yeah.
I always smile whenever I see a game use playing cards instead of dice. Because I've always felt that there's so much untapped potential when it comes to using playing cards
more than just Weird West games can do it,
I know some people bring up Savage Worlds, but it only uses playing cards for initiative, so I don't count that. I'm referring to when it is used as the core system. Stuff like the two Saga system games that TSR made in the mid-90s, for example. Or games like Faith or Abaddon.
Abaddon, like Lost Haven Andy's Abaddon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, he was the. I did the first episode of Indie Spotlight I did with him about his Skies Above game.
Yeah, and I would al- I would al- one of the mechanic systems that has always stuck in my mind, even though it's not from the last couple of years, but it is one that I've enjoyed and brought up a lot, is the victory point system in Fading Suns.
Please.
Now, I have described this system as D20 blackjack. It is a roll under system with the target number being the sum of your attribute and skill as a
Okay.
baseline. Obviously, there might be situational modifiers that move it up or down. You know how that goes. But you're not trying to aim for the lowest result. You can succeed on a 1, but a 1 is treated as a bare minimum success.
Okay.
The higher
So you
die
want to get.
you roll, the more victory points you get. The more victory points you get, the better degree of success you have.
So if you're like DC or whatever they would call it, your challenge is like 15. You want to roll a 14 or a 15.
You don't want to roll a 15. That is a critical failure.
Okay, you want to roll a 13 or a 14, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Pretty much. Hence why I call it D20 blackjack, since, in a game of blackjack, you're trying to get as close to 21 as you can without busting.
Indeed. And if you are rolling, if your skill plus attribute is really low, maybe you don't want to even roll at all, because that seems like it could end pretty badly for you.
Mm-hmm. But one game that I will point out that's a more recent thing that really impressed me with some of its approaches is a game from Italy called Not the End.
Not the End.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Not the End uses the Hexis system, and this was a game that got a lot of awards in its native Italy.
Okay.
It is a game that is all about taking risks, and a game that does not use traditional numbers for its mechanics. Instead, it uses a kind of descriptive tag that is set up in a sort of honeycomb, and it's one where where there's in order to get the best kind of successes, you have to take risks. There's no getting around it.
Okay, so that's interesting. So I'm trying to envision this. Does it use dice, or
it uses dice?
Okay.
You essentially have to. I guess the best way to put it is ante the the traits that you're picking.
Mm-hmm.
And these can be things like abilities, qualities, and archetypes. The original version of it used a drawing from a bag of beads approach to its mechanics. But some of the other games that have used this system, like Knights of the Round Academy, instead use a dice system. Knights of the Round Academy is a game that is mixing elements of the Arthurian cycle, school drama, and mecha.
Okay.
And in that regard, if it very much feels like what I would actually expect from somebody making a anime TTRPG. Which as an aside, I'm glad that we're seeing less attempts to try and do anime as a whole and more specific genre attempts over the last few years.
I agree. We don't need another Besom. That's already out there, and
that and a lot of those end up being downstream from Universalist games, which have their own issues.
Sure.
But you end up having to within that system. You end up having to roll a set of dice. Usually, either a set of D6s, D8s, or D12s. The idea being, you build up a pool of dice, 1d8 from each trait that relates to the thing that you're rolling for, up to 6.
Mm-hmm.
You can spend limit points to add a D12, and in addition to that, the difficulty score will turn one of those dice into a D6. If there is a threat trait on it, it can turn a D6 into a D4, and you have to try and roll a certain number of die over a threshold. You basically have to roll for hits, and because of that,
right?
The approach is that if when you roll all those die, you're only keeping the highest positive and negative. You need at least one of them to get at least 6.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. So I think I got it anyway. Yeah. But one thing I'll say is, regardless of how it works, I applaud any system that makes it almost requires player characters to take risks, right? Because it's so hard. One of the downfalls of a system that specializes characters into various roles is that you become very comfortable only playing your role, and making your character move outside of their assigned role to take risks to get the good stuff, whether that's successes or treasure or whatever, that's worth trying. Would you say that that's kind of the way the system functions, or
it very much is? And I even try to include a lot of risk reward design in my system. And what has gotten me into a bit of trouble, because when I've brought this up, is, oddly enough, a fair bit of my design, I've taken some inspiration from shooters, especially FPSs.
Okay.
And part of that is there is a certain mindset within the tabletop space that acts like you need to have this great wall of China between video games and TTRPGs, which I've never ascribed to, or this great wall of China where you can't draw from anime or manga, which obviously I don't ascribe to. And the big reason,
I don't get that.
It is very much a ivory tower, old guard kind of thinking. It's not far removed from the rockism mindset that was really prevalent in music criticism, going all the way up to the 90s. Basically, the idea that the only true music was rock, and specifically classic rock, i.e., if it wasn't from the 70s, it's not real music.
Okay.
If that sounds stupid, it's because it is.
Oh boy,
that was a thing back in the day. And I look at say Halo. With Halo, you have this speed chess design built around its version of the Golden Triangle, which isn't DPS, ranged, and tank and healer, but rather guns, melee, grenade. And before that, a lot of games would have grenades and melee as something you had to cycle into, whereas a game like Halo had it that you always had access to all 3 of them with a button press. And you had to manage what was the best choice for the situation at every given second. In something like the better Call of Duties, the regenerating health was to reinforce a degree of intensity. And taking those into account, when I'm designing systems or looking at systems, I'm always thinking of, what is this designed to encourage? And I look at the way risk setup is designed, and it's very much encouraged that you are supposed to take risk. You're supposed to face these you're supposed to have a no pain, no gain approach. When I look at a war game like War Machine, its formation system is built around the fact that you're trying to take an aggressive stance instead of playing defensive, which is a common habit among a lot of war games to have a more defensive style of play. War Machine and subsequently Iron Kingdoms wants you to be more aggressive.
I've not played those. I have to admit, those are miniatures games, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. But that is anything that we can do to sort of keep the players on their toes, right? As I think is good. And yeah. I definitely enjoy thinking and talking about ways to manipulate these risk reward mechanics to keep players thinking about what they're trying to do, and how they're doing it, and what they'll get out of it if they succeed.
Yeah.
So
I remember when Nami was working on her mech RPG All Systems Go, and since she wanted to draw upon Armored Core with it, and one of the things I suggested is instead of having just a universal movement action, put a lot more emphasis on active and reactive movement. Because if you've ever played one of the Armored Core games, one of the big things that's going to get drilled into your head is never stop moving. You stop moving, you're going to get shot at. If you're on a harder mission or you're on a higher difficulty, you're probably dead.
Reactive movement, that's interesting. So like to use like D&D parlance, using your reaction to shift elsewhere if someone moves into a position where they can shoot you or attack you.
Imagine that you get a limited amount of movement whenever an attack misses you.
Okay. So then you can shift into like a better position where you can either counterattack or get into cover or something along those lines. Okay.
And to that end, I appreciate. I've been going through the core book of Draw Steel on Fridays on some of my streams, and one of the big things I appreciate, this was something that was in D&D 4e to a point, and I'm vindicated by having it in this, is a lot of emphasis on actions that either encourage movement or force it. There's a whole economy of force movement, of slides, of vertical movement, of stability being an anti-movement defense, or a kind of movement soak. And depending on your choice of class, moving people around is going to be a big damn deal for you.
Right.
Last week we covered the Talent, who, if you take the telekinesis build, you're going to be moving people around a lot.
Yeah. That would be the fun, right?
Yeah, I mean, we all had our fair share of fun with the gravity gun, and one of my earliest D&D characters was a thief who had to be house ruled to hell because of the idea I wanted to go with wasn't one that was supported in the book.
Sure.
Which was I wanted to be a trap master. I wanted to have it that he could set up magic and physical traps to treat the battlefield like his own Rube Goldberg experiment. Not just things like putting a bear trap, but putting a trap where the kind of force movement that you saw in the old Chips Challenge PC game, for instance.
I don't think I'd ever played that, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that was a PC puzzle game that people who had Windows at a certain age probably had played at least some bits of, and there were plenty of cases where you had to carefully consider how you were moving. And one of the more infamous cases of this was a trap called the up button. I've told this story many times on stream, but I may as well reiterate here. The up button is exactly what it sounds like. It is a rune trap. You step on the thing, you go up. You are going up 40 miles an hour for about 6 seconds, as if you cast fly on yourself.
Okay.
It'll only last 6 seconds when somebody steps on it, but the infamous part of this thing was late in the campaign, a dragon steps on the trap, and this is in a cave lined with adamantite. You know as well as I do, adamantite does not budge for anything, not even other adamantite. So dragon hits the ceiling. He takes wall damage, and then the GM goes, and not he's gonna come back down shortly after. I'm like, no, he's not. It hasn't been 6 seconds. This resulted in a small argument where he was like, "That's adamantite. It's not going to budge. He's not breaking through the ceiling." And I had said, "The spell does not care," because I was operating under the belief that a individual spell is like a computer program. It is going to do that one thing and nothing else. So if the spell says you go up, and it does not care what's in the way.
Yeah, and that seems like a dragon shish kebab is how that ends.
It wasn't a shish kebab. It was you ever see a car get compacted?
Yeah.
That's what happened to the dragon. It was chunky salsa. And we all had to roll Constitution to see if we lose our lunch from seeing all of the juicy bits.
Yeah. Boy.
on the plus side, the neighboring village didn't have to worry about food for about 3 years.
Suppose that's true, yeah. Although I guess the insides are now on the outside, so they don't have to do much skinning or harvesting too. So there you go.
No, I mean, you got to deal with the smell carrying the stuff back, but that's what plugs are for.
Well, yeah, this has been this you have a lot of good things to tell me today, Mildra, about Final Fantasy TTRPG Legend Edition, or just Legend Edition.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's about time to start wrapping it up. So, and do you have a call to action for our listeners today? Something that you would like them to think about going forward, whether it has to do with the game or just game design in general, or how to play games, anything that you feel like sharing, or just putting incepting into our listeners' heads.
I feel like I should play the Inception horn if my soundboard worked. And there is a TTRPG themed around Inception. There's 2 of them I have.
Oh, okay. Not like the actual property of the movie, but just things that are based around the idea.
Based around the idea, and there's the Dreamwalkers project that Luca De Marini had recently kickstarted. But
cool.
The call to action, I would say, is stop making excuses. Because I've been at this for a long time, and I have heard every variation of I'd like to get into TTRPGs, or I'd like to get into games other than D&D, but stop saying but. The only buts that I want to hear about are the ones on your backside, and I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
What do I look like, Sir Mix-a-Lot? Don't answer that. There are so many resources out there that there is no excuse to not try. It seems too complicated. There are games that are simpler than games that are more complex. It's too expensive to get started. There are games out there for free. There are hundreds of free games out there. Mine is just a drop in the bucket. Or I don't know how to work a VTT. There's dozens and dozens of tutorials. Or I can't get a group together. There are whole subreddits and there are whole subreddits dedicated to this. And worst case scenario, you can go on start playing games and hire a GM.
Yeah. And hey, if you and even if you have a bad group or have one of those, D&D horror stories, or new game horror stories, you can start a YouTube channel about it.
Yeah, there are way too many. I won't say there's too many options, but the depth of options means that at some point the but just becomes an excuse. It becomes someone who wants the appearance of trying but not actually trying. The equivalent of the New Year, New Me people that show up every January at any gym you can think of. They are so regular about that the people who run gyms set their watch to it. Because they'll come in, do a membership, only stay for about 2 weeks, and then not do it, but still pay for that membership.
Yeah, never me.
Well, it certainly wasn't me because I lost like 6 inches during 6 inches on my waist during the pandemic, and it was
cool.
From both gym and just standard working out, even if it did get me screamed at by at least one Karen when I was biking because I wasn't wearing a mask and there was nobody for at least 30 feet, and she comes screaming at me like, what are you on, woman? But
yeah, I mean, when you're outside, it's kind of whatever. So,
but not only that, but it was 6:30 in the morning. So I'm like, why are you yelling at me? You should be asleep. but that is the call to action, because I've seen, and I know one of the other excuses that I often hear is the marketing argument. Mm-hmm. My brother in Christ, you are the marketing. Most games that get any traction these days are through good old fashioned word of mouth or watching streamers.
Yep.
So no, that's not an excuse either. I always tell people, if you hit the cons, there are various tags on different social medias just dedicated to people shilling their shit. Apologies for cursing. I haven't done that yet, but
nah, that's okay. Well, these aren't really meant for kids anyway, so
yeah. You have to be this tall to ride this ride. I get it.
Exactly.
I used that once with somebody whose character was a dwarf, and they were like, "What, seriously?" And they're like, "Rules are rules. Now beat it." But
oh man,
even in video games, I have that whole thing of just look at more stuff, because I know it is trendy and a very in thing to be cynical about the state of entertainment. But every single day, I end up being exposed to some new video game, TTRPG, card game, or board game by somebody who's passionate about it and wants to put that thing out there. That's why I started doing those interviews 5 years ago, was to give that kind of platform. And I'm not sure if you've seen the channel, but I have over 1,000 of them under my belt.
Oh yeah, I've seen it.
And it is with folks who have been all over the place. I've even gotten the rare opportunity to interview a few voice actors in the process, cool. Even if one of them peer pressured me into getting Australian wine. But every few months I do this stream called The Hangover Shit Show, which is all about highlighting a bunch of different indie games after certain trade shows. I never watched the trade show presentations at things like TGS or Gamescom or whatnot. I end up just looking through different sites and grabbing a bunch of trailers for indie games I find interesting and showcase them. And I did it as a reaction to when people were kept insisting that, say, E3, when that was still a thing, was disappointing, or they thought the games were disappointing, or some people would insist to me, nobody's making any good games these days. All the good games were made 10, 15, whatever years ago their childhood was. And
sure,
I, as somebody who finds so many different new projects that I can barely keep up, and none of them are scrub projects. I will note that. It's an assertion that doesn't match reality, to where I think that someone who makes that assertion needs it more than um, it actually exists. The demand exceeds the supply. And my
It,
goal has always been to squeeze out the excuses.
the indie TTRPG scene, and I haven't been doing this podcast for very long, but one thing I've learned is that it's not a pond, it's an ocean. Okay, there are a ton of people doing a lot of interesting things out there that you would never have imagined. You can look at my backlog, you can look at Mildra's backlog to see a lot of the folks who are very passionate, who are making a lot of really cool stuff. Um, and just check it out. It's like you're saying, there's no excuse. The only thing that you need to do is put in a little effort and explore. It's that is one of the core, supposedly one of the core pillars of D&D in particular, and TTRPGs generally, is exploration. So do it through social media. Check
Mhm.
out some folks who are talking about these kind of things. Follow our here's the plug. Follow our podcast respectively,
Mhm.
in our Twitch channels, so that you can see more of these things as they come out. No excuses, folks. Try something new. You're going to be surprised by what you find out there. Give some of the little guys a chance, even if you see something from one of the bigger companies that seems really cool to you. It just might be. And if you can, you might be um, find some like-minded people who you can enjoy those things with. Just give it a go. Just play everything, right?
Mhm.
What do you think? Is that am I on the right track there?
Pretty much. Uh,
Yeah.
and hell, I've as a case in point, when I decided to start doing actual plays again, D&D was not on the list. Currently, I'm doing
Hmm.
7th C. Next year, I'm going to be doing Mythcraft.
Yeah. Mythcraft is pretty cool.
Mhm.
Yeah. I was just reminded by my editor that I need to tell people to like the stream. We're gonna get to that, Coco. Thank you, though. Yeah, Mythcraft is very cool. I've interviewed Andy from that particular project. They've been doing very well for themselves. They had a booth at Gen Con this year.
Mhm.
Um, and one cool thing about them is that their stuff, folks, is free. They have their SRD free if you want to check it out. If you like it, and you can always, then buy some physical copies. Um, but it's kind of, if you're not Mr. Moneybags, you don't have to put in another $150 to buy core rule books to play Mythcraft. Just try it out. There
Mhm.
are there are multiple different podcasts that have the Mythcraft. If you want to just check it out. So
Yeah,
Mythcraft,
I've
amongst many others.
mhm. I will note that on a bi-weekly basis, I've been doing a podcast exploring Sword World, which
Mm,
I started to kind of correct the record on certain falsehoods that had been spread, especially spread by William SRD, who I don't think he's a bad guy. I just think that in his effort to be an entertainer, he he skips out on certain details.
yeah.
Uh, but since that's getting an official translation early next year, it's a good opportunity to discuss it, and by extension discuss the very fascinating world that is the Japanese TTRPG scene.
Mm.
Oh,
Yeah, it seems like I know they have a big one. But they like different things than what the Western world tends to be into.
yeah,
Like
I'd say
all I know is I've heard Call of Cthulhu is very big over there.
Call of Cthulhu is. There's a very dedicated fan base for things like Earth Dawn as well,
Mm,
and
okay.
the Japanese versions of Earth Dawn and Shadowrun from the 90s are a much different approach, especially Shadowrun. Shadowrun in Japan looks nothing like the US or German version of Shadowrun.
Really? Okay.
Mhm. And there's there's also all the stuff that Where's Blade Where's Blade, which recently did its Kickstarter, and all the other stuff that Lion Wing is doing. Lion Wing is doing the Lord's work with some of the stuff they're bringing in, and and just a bunch of different projects. There's a much bigger diversity of projects that I've seen coming out of Japan, because there isn't this mindset of one system to rule them all.
Hmm.
Some companies will have a certain system that only they use, but it's not like everybody's trying to do a variant of one system.
Right. And you know, so much we could say about D&D here and the various pitfalls that we've kind of fallen into in the Western scene with that. But
Mhm.
I've said it elsewhere. I don't need to repeat that.
I do think that I think after the Yale fiasco a few years ago, we're seeing the small movements of change towards like away from that, especially with this wave that we've seen of people who were longtime D&D developers deciding to break off and do their own thing,
Mhm.
and have done so to much success.
And that's great. You know, that should be applauded. Trying out new things. Even as a developer, you got to keep on upping your game when you're working on new projects. Um, I'm almost eager to be done with Skies so I can work on some of the various other ideas I've had for games down the line here. So still though, love this project too.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think we've been going for about 2 hours. I think it's probably about time to sign off. If you're cool with that, Mildred, any
Hmm.
final thoughts from you before we put the kibosh on the stream for the evening?
Um, for the last 11 years, I've stated that I am on a divine crusade to show what's out there, and that is not changing, because to quote one of my favorite movies, we're on a mission from God.
Yeah, mission from God. Sunglasses on. Very cool. Thank you for being here today. Would you like to do your pluggables real quick?
Oh yeah. So I will be doing one of my gaming streams later tonight. I spun the wheel on what's coming next after I finished Bright Memory. The next game that's going to be covered is Immortals of Avenum, uh, which is a magic FPS. Uh, so that's going to be an interesting thing. We don't get a lot of those, and I'm always fascinated with mixing um, technology with magic instead of having them be separate. Uh,
Yeah. Like there was
Tomorrow,
that game recently where you were, it was like an isometric game, like turn based, where you were like a strike team of like wizard SWAT team members
yeah,
or
Tactical
something.
Breach Wizards,
That's
which
right. Yeah.
felt like a XCOM mod that got way out of hand. Then again,
Didn't
I can
play
say the
it.
same thing
Thought
about
it looked
the.
interesting.
Then again, the most infamous XCOM mod is the Long War, which that will break you. Uh, but tomorrow I'll be spinning the wheel again regarding a RPG, because Tuesdays is Tactical Tuesdays, and
Mm,
I'll also be interviewing Tim Gonzalez, since he's doing a print run on the first Reflection expansion for his Beacon RPG, Prismaxia.
hmm
On what on Thursday is night one of the Valley of the Judge, which is my weekly deep dive series into various TTRPGs.
mm.
We will be starting our look at the Fantasy Star RPG.
Oh, okay. Like from the '90s RPG series.
Yeah, 90s and 2000s. It's including both the original
Okay.
quartet and online in terms of what it's covering.
Wow, I haven't thought about Phantasy Star in quite a while, I have to admit.
And we'll be taking a look at it. On Friday is night 2 of the Valley of the Judged, where we are going to be looking at the final class in the core book for Draw Steel, the Troubadour. And every time I do one of these class overviews, I end up ranting about the interesting history of the class's predecessor, and then concluding that the comparison between this and the D&D equivalent class is there is no comparison.
Okay.
Like last week, we did the Talent, which is the equivalent of the Scion. I ended up ranting for about 50 minutes about some of the really, really stupid things Scions have had to be subjected to over the years.
Making them like psychic wizards, basically, is what I always sort of thought of them as in third edition Science Handbook.
Yeah. Like the AD&D era, where they had a whole separate combat system to themselves, which had like between 5 to 20 different attack forms. Even when I've spoken to people from the Gygax family, they're like, we tried with it, it just didn't work. I'm like, did you really? But I try to go into those sorts of history to show what sort of insanity we're dealing with, and also how many times I can invoke D&D 4th edition, because I am extremely petty.
Indeed.
And Saturday, I'll be continuing the Perils of Arrogance, which is the 7th Sea 2nd edition campaign I've been doing.
Yep.
And next Sunday is a bi-weekly series that I do called Fated Continuum, which is my co-writer Zan and I going through each Final Fantasy and discussing how we would adapt certain characters into Legend Edition. We are currently at 4.
Doing any particular character or characters?
Whole cast.
Okay. And that's a pretty big cast in 4, so you got your work cut out for you.
Yeah, we had the thing that we said is that now that we're out of the NES era, it's going to be a lot easier, because with 1 and 3 we had to stretch things a little bit, since you have essentially blank slate characters. Yeah. And also with 1, there were some weird things that we had to try and work around. And oddly enough, the hardest class to work with out of the original 6 in 1 was the Monk. Because the Monk has some weird mechanics. You may have heard of the Naked Monk build, where you're actually stronger without with the less you equip.
I have heard of that, yes.
There's also the fact that the upgrade you get from Bahamut, there's not really a significant change compared to the others. Thief becomes ninja and gets black magic. Fighter becomes knight and gets white magic. The different mages become the wizard version of their forms and get access to higher level spells. And I will note with both 1 and 3, when it comes to the question of whether or not we use the Vancian model, because those games did, the answer to that was no. The remakes for the GBA didn't even use it, so why should we?
Cool.
But because of the fact that you have more, that from 4 onward, you have more defined characters, even with the job system returning in 5, I have something to build around. And also remember, guys speak Beaver.
So Beastmaster a little bit? I don't know, probably.
Yeah, Zan had suggested Beastmaster specifically because Guy speaks Beaver.
He does. That's the most important line in that entire game, really. Mm-hmm. Most memorable. Yeah.
But we're doing 4 next. We haven't decided whether or not we're going to include Interlude in the after years. We're 50-50 on that. But we'll also be judging the results of the October design challenge. When I do the design challenges, it is always based on the idea is I give a theme and you have to run with it. The theme last month, because October was spooky season, was you have to make a race built based around one of the old Universal monsters.
Oh, okay.
One of the theme before that in September was designing around the Sword Timber art project, which is something a few artists do, where they'll design a different sword based on these one-word prompts. And because we have a magic item creation system, they're like, all right, a sword a day for 30 days. It took us 4 hours to go through all of them.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, you set yourself up for that one, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I kind of did. Fortunately, I am not going to do anything like that again for at least a year.
Okay. Well, people can obviously find you on Twitch and YouTube. If you want to get in on can people join your Discord if they want to get in on some of these design challenges?
Oh yeah.
Okay. And the best place they can find you on Blue Sky, on Twitter, as Mildra the Monk. Yep. Any other place you want people to tell people about where they can track you down?
Obviously, I'm pretty much Mildra the Monk at anywhere that I have a presence. On YouTube, it is Mildra the Monk VT. On Twitch, it is Mildra the Monk there as well. You already mentioned Twitter and Blue Sky. Whenever I do stream, I multi-stream on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. And those are the main places where I can be found.
Cool. Well, folks, if you want a really active streamer who takes game design very seriously, you couldn't do any better than Mildra here. Check out his stuff. Make sure to track him down. I'm sure you'd be happy to chat with folks, answer questions, things like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always up for learning something from folks, or helping other people learn about something they didn't even know they were going to be a fan of.
Cool. Well, as for me, I'm Dread Pirate Sizer. I am the lead dev on the TTRPG Skies of Fortune, which is the Sky Pirate RPG, hopefully launching in 2027. Still got a bit of writing to do on that one. But you can find me on Blue Sky and Twitter and Facebook at Skies of Fortune is the name of the game. I do have a Discord as well. You can find it through my link tree. Well, actually, maybe not. If you just ping me if you want a link to the Discord. We'll find a way to make it a little bit easier to get into that in the future. If you liked what you saw today on Twitch or on YouTube, please like, comment, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. We're very happy that you decided to hang out in our stream today and listen to what we had to say. Thank you, Mildra, very much for being here. You were a great guest. You had so many insights, so much cool stuff to talk about. The name of the game that he has made, along with a few other great developers, is Final Fantasy TTRPG Legend Edition. You can find a link to that in the description, and we will, probably to all the other stuff that we mentioned here too, frankly. So thank you once again for chilling out with me for a few hours tonight. It was a fascinating conversation.
Always a pleasure. I enjoy being had whenever I can.
Okay. Well, thank you, folks, for tuning in tonight. Like the stream, all that good stuff. We will catch you on the next one. This has been the Indie Spotlight podcast. If you want to see more of the most interesting indie games, indie TTRPGs out there, make sure to follow so you can get more of them as they come. Have a great one. We'll see you at the next one. Bye, everybody.